everyone, and welcome to our weekly dose of Fatlogic. I gotta be honest, I do not feel mentally or emotionally prepared for this today. I'm not in my I'm ready to get angry sort of mood, but we're just gonna dive in and see where this journey takes us. We don't have an obesity epidemic. We have a disordered eating epidemic. So I'm gonna stop right there before reading down here and just want to say I actually kind of agree with this, but not in the way they're intending. I mean, obviously we do have an obesity epidemic, but I do think that there seems to be a larger proportion of cases of like binge eating. I think binging eating has become more of an issue as of late, and this could be from hyperpalatable foods. This could be from like you have restaurants like Heart Attack Grill where they encourage you to just eat in excess and eat these huge amounts, this like really high fat, high calorie food. So I could see how like binge eating has become more of an issue. It's our obsession with thinness that makes us sick. Our intense self-hatred, internalized weight bias, discrimination in the medical system that leads to inferior healthcare for people in larger bodies, chronic dieting, weight cycling, lack of resources for marginalized folks. But isn't it so much easier just to blame it all on obesity and tell people to eat less and exercise more? So, honey, like, our intense self-hatred, that's a you thing. You need to work on that. If you have like self-hatred issues, been there, understand that's you need to work on yourself. If you can't afford a therapist, like get some self-help books. Just like I'm not going to say that it's going to be an easy, but that's something you have to deal with yourself. Internalized weight bias. Dude, you know why people naturally look at severely obese people? I mean, people that are so fat that they waddle, they don't walk. It's because there is something. I honestly believe there's something intrinsic in our brains that when someone reaches one of the extremes of either super skinny or super obese, our brains realize that there's something wrong with them. And so there is a sense of, I don't know if it's disgust or more like just avoid that, because I think it could potentially be a evolutionary mechanism to prevent you from getting a disease that that person may have, like discrimination in the medical system that leads to inferior healthcare for people in larger bodies. Honey, most of the time losing weight is like your actual what's medically necessary for whatever you're dealing with. That's just the way it is. Chronic dieting and weight cycling, that's just because you don't stick to your diet or you choose stupid diets, stupid fad diets that aren't going to actually help you. Lack of resources for marginalized folks. I would like to see what you mean by this. Because, like, there's marginalized folks and then there's fat people. So which are you talking about? Ugh. We're just going to move on. If you're cold, just put more layers on. Okay. Or how about you realize that it's incredibly embarrassing for some fat people because the industry simply does not make clothing big enough for adequate layering. And then you're embarrassed because your winter coat doesn't even button all the way up and are too tight in the arms and you just want to cry. Well, if the winter coat that you had last year is now not buttoning all the way up and the arms are too tight, that means you gained weight. That's not the clothing's fault. Do we realize that? And have you tried Torrid? Have you, like, if you cannot find clothes that you can layer, then perhaps you should work on losing some weight. Just saying. I actually know a couple of very heavy people, and they can layer just fine. So you are either not actually putting the footwork in to find stuff that will work for you, or you're so morbidly obese that I highly suspect that you probably aren't able to move around much. And you're not going out anyway in that case, so don't worry about it. Today I learned that because they're designed for thin people, blood pressure cuffs are simply inaccurate for fat bodies. And the false measurements skew in the direction of bias. So, like, who knows if weight has any connection to blood pressure at all? Medicine is fully evil, y'all. Oh my fucking god. One, they do have multiple size pressure cuffs for people that are larger. And I find it interesting that you're like, it skews in the direction of bias, but you don't really explain what that means. I'm assuming, though, that if it's tighter, it's going to assume that your blood pressure is higher than it actually is. But you have to be, like, you have to be really big for the biggest blood pressure cuff to not fit you. Like, just to give you guys an example, I went to the doctor not that long ago. I had to get my blood pressure done. It was just a checkup, but so they, of course, need to take my blood pressure. I am considered obese by BMI standards. Like, I'm on the cusp, but I am still technically obese. They still had to use the smallest blood pressure cuff they had. Not like kid size, but the smallest adult blood pressure cuff that they had to fit my arm. And my arms are one of the fatter portions where my fat is distributed. My arms are fucking fat for the fat distribution on my body. And they still had to use the smallest blood pressure cuff for adults that they had. So, if the blood pressure cuff is not fitting you, then you are probably so morbidly obese that you had to come in there via an ambulance simply to transport you because you could not fit in a car to get over there. So that's not medicine being inaccurate with its blood pressure measurements. That's simply you are so fat that there is no accurate way to measure you. And you're probably in such a minority that no one's going to change that, their measurement tools. I wonder what it's like to be able to sit in a doctor's waiting room without having to reassure yourself that you're not crazy. Why exactly do you have to reassure yourself that you're not crazy? I really don't understand that part of it. Like, what do you mean you have to reassure yourself that you're not crazy? Why the fuck are you even there if you think medicine is evil and all this shit? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand what she means by this. Sitting in a doctor's office or a doctor's waiting room without having to reassure yourself that you're not crazy. If you haven't been taken back yet, what is there anything that you're, like, having to reassure yourself on? I'm so confused by that portion. If someone understands what she means by that, please explain it in the comments, because I do not understand. You don't realize how heavily food features in life until it becomes an issue. Weddings, funerals, the Christmas do. I'm happy to go along and not eat, but people stare and it feels awkward. Instead, I turn down invitations. I miss cooking and baking. Now I barely eat 500 calories a day, but I haven't lost any weight. When you're overweight, your doctors aren't too bothered that you're not eating enough. Honey, that's not how this works at all. One, I do understand when you are trying to eat healthy during the holidays and not go overboard. And at special events and all of that, there's some ways to combat that, like for weddings. If I'm going to a wedding where, like, it's probably going to be heavier food or there's going to be more food, then I'll have a filling breakfast and then probably only a snack if I really, really need it, if it's like the wedding is later in the day. And then kind of figure out my calories as I go. And if you go over by a little bit, then you'll just make it up throughout the rest of the week. But I do understand how not eating feels awkward, because it is like you're that one person that won't eat, and do you not like the food? Are you being rude? That sort of thing. And I understand missing cooking and baking. I have to kind of space out when I bake stuff, because otherwise I'll eat a ton of shit. So I do understand that. However, you saying you barely eat 500 calories and haven't lost weight, I'm calling some bullshit on that. That doesn't happen unless you have like a severe, even if you had a severe metabolic disorder, you would still lose weight on 500 calories a day. You are not counting your calories correctly. If you think you're eating 500 calories a day and not losing any weight, like you are off significantly. Like, are you not counting your snacks? Are you not counting the drinks that you have? Because oftentimes people that drink full calorie drinks don't realize that they're taking in an extra, 5, 6, 700 calories, depending on how big they're getting those drinks. Your doctors aren't worried because they know that you're lying to yourself. Hey all, I have my lips done, filler, by a lady who, in all honesty, has been nothing but wonderfully kind to me. She also told me how beautiful I am and how she loves to see confident big women. She's always made me feel comfortable. Well, I've just seen her Instagram and I'm in shock. Loads of fat phobia before and after pictures referring to herself when plus size as negatively. She has a diagnosed ED now. She presents as skeletal now and has body dysmorphia, so I know she's unwell. I just can't help, be upset by the things I've seen and feel like she must view me as a walking before image. Screenshot, for example, in comments. Am I overthinking this? Many things. Okay, so let's dissect this real quick. So this woman is actively against being fat for herself. She posts before and after pictures. She reviews herself as plus size, but you say she presents as skeletal. You've noted that she has a diagnosed ED and body dysmorphia. And yet all you can think about is how she must view you and how that makes you feel, and how dare she, when she's clearly dealing with all this, and she's been nothing but kind to you when you went and got your lips done by her. But because she isn't perfect, because she isn't as loving of fatness as you are somehow the victim of her Instagram profile that is strictly for her, has nothing to fucking do with you. No. You have been victimized by this woman with an ED and body dysmorphia disorder because she posts before and after pictures and views herself as plus size in a negative light. Okay. Just the amount of self-absorbed mentality is just fucking baffling with these people. It's just fucking unreal. Being told our whole lives that fat people cannot exercise for pleasure but must exercise to repent for the sin of being fat, and all the other fat phobia that causes fat people to be shamed, ridiculed, and gate-kept out of being active. If it weren't for fat phobia and the abuse of fat people, there would be just as many active fat people as there are active thin people. No, honey, there would not. So, no one's saying that fat people can't exercise for pleasure, for the fun of it. No one has said that ever. No one fucking cares so long as you're moving. Like, they don't fucking care. You may have been kept out of certain activities because your weight puts you at risk of injury. That's how that works. And no, there would not be just as many active fat people as thin people, because the more active fat people that there were, the thinner those fat people would get until they became thin, and then they would be more part of the active thin people. Fat people aren't that active. If they were, they would be thinner. That's not how that works, where you're like, there would be just as many active fat people, and the only reason why there isn't is because they're shamed, ridiculed, and kept out of being active by, like, other activities. No, let's be honest. Most fat people like to sit and binge watch Netflix or play video games, and not shaming those activities. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do, but let's not pretend that fat people would just be these pictures of fitness and activity were it not for the evil thins. Let's fucking be real here. I mean, really. It just, God, the amount of self-victimization is just amazing. I mean, clearly they believe this. Clearly they believe that it would be a utopia for fat people, and they would be just as active and healthy as everyone else if it just weren't for society telling them that they're fat, basically. I do not have the patience for this week. I do not have the capacity to deal with this level of stupidity and self-victimization. I just don't have it. So we're going to end it here. I apologize if I'm going to do my best to edit it out, but I've had some issues with my sinuses today, so I hope you did not hear me sneezing at any point in this video. As for my weight loss journey, I have lost another pound this week. I'm very happy. And I will see you next week. Thank you for watching. Let me know how your weight loss journey is going if you are on one, and I will see you next time.